What is going on YouTube? This is Acid Root. So I'm going to review the third album by singer Lady Gaga. Basically, this project is called Artpop and it came out in the fall of 2013. Now, this was a pretty hit album, I'd have to say, but it's kind of haphazard in the approach as to how it happened, just because the number of singles just didn't quite fare as well as they needed to. One of which was an R. Kelly song that got removed because this one of which was an R. Kelly song that got removed from the album and streaming and stuff because of the scandals that he went through and that type of stuff. And another one was just kind of a subpar reception that was kind of, and another single was a song that had subpar reception for Lady Gaga up to that point. So it was just kind of interesting how that kind of happened. But this is kind of an album that just didn't perform quite as heavily as Lady Gaga normally was. Her first two albums, The Fame slash The Fame Monster and then Born This Way, were both two exuberant ones that just did extremely well. But this is kind of where Lady Gaga seemingly went back from like her normal ubiquitous kind of ways. It's not to say this is a bad album. I just kind of look after it. I just was surprised that the reception about this album just didn't carry over quite as much. I mean, she was there between like the late summer of 2013 to about the opening months of 2014, but this album just didn't last all summer like her normal fare, like with Born. Like this album just didn't last all summer like some of her normal fare with like the Fame Monster, and then Born This Way, and some of those particular type moments. But it is like I was saying, this is an excellent album, I'd have to say, and I do recommend it wholesomely. If the reception on it has kind of dimmed as far as that kind of went, I just wouldn't listen, because this is basically like a pretty quality album. It's going to get a pretty rave score, I'd have to say. And it's just the concept that this is basically Lady Gaga and like a supersized version of what she was doing. This is kind of like a supersized version of Lady Gaga and what she was doing on like The Fame and Born This Way, as far as that kind of happens. It just doesn't have the stretching singles. For some reason, the singles just, I was surprised that she didn't really pack more singles into this album as far as that kind of went. The promotion just kind of wrapped kind of quickly, but she did basically drop Cheek to Cheek with Tony Bennett like less than a year later. So that's kind of the concept about it. I'm going to get to that one, but I just would have to say this is a pretty excellent album. Just some dance pop kind of fare, some EDM type stuff, synth pop, just basically like a more vanilla version of the stuff that Jeffree Star was kind of doing back in 2009, 2010, I'd have to say. But I like the concept of it. Some good stuff as far as it kind of happens. Just some real kind of ritzy, kind of rave dance energy that Lady Gaga nails pretty well. This is definitely a lot more fancy and just kind of a lot more, definitely to say ritzy, I'd have to say it's just a lot more kind of gracious and just graceful as far as it kind of happens. This one, more, I mean, I was starting to notice that Lady Gaga was starting to get that way with Born This Way and the Fame Monster EP, but I definitely say by this particular album, this is a lot more severe and just like its ritziness and just overall kind of not necessarily bougie, but just in the neighboring community of that, just a lot more this almost blue blood territory as far as it kind of happens. Just a real kind of rich kind of feeling that just has like some exuberance about it. So it's a good concept to kind of get that. But this is, yeah, the album title being Art Pop is very artful as far as it kind of happens, but I like the combination of it being art and pop music because it's a good concept as far as getting that. So yeah, basically there's three singles on this particular album. I am going to talk about the R. Kelly song despite the fact that it's removed from the Spotify and CD editions nowadays, but I would have to say the first single is Applause. So the first single is Applause. This is basically like a crisp, kind of affable hit single. I'd have to say it's a great ritzy dance tune. I definitely feel like, and it's just a get things started rather quickly kind of tune. This is definitely a gets things started rather quickly type song, I'd have to say. And it's just overall pretty jivey. So this is just one. This is like a perfect little. This Lady Gaga song is overall pretty excellent. This is probably one of the highlighted songs out of 2013. I'd have to say just an overall good snap and bounce that it kind of has. Just a perfect little marketed single as far as that kind of happens. Just a perfect little marketed single as far as that kind of happens. Definitely it has the affable kind of energy, deserved the chart success that it got, and it was just an overall great time that continues to carry energy, and it has that continues to carry the energy and has overall lastability even today. This is a great song to hear on the radio as far as that kind of happens. I just would have to suppose that this is a highlighted one. Definitely it would be, this is pretty much like a highlight out of the 2010s. I'd have to say this is just an easy kind of highlight and it still carries energy even today. So I'd say Applause is just a very crisp Lady Gaga single that just works pretty damn well. The second single that was removed from streaming services and the album as a whole is Do What You Want with R. Kelly. This is basically like a hit dance vibe, I would have to say. This is basically like a hit dance vibe, I'd have to say. It's a simmering single, definitely. And it's just a good follow up to Applause. This is just a good follow up to Applause, I definitely would have to say. And the melodies hit pretty hard. R. Kelly and Lady Gaga do a great job on this particular song. It's very melodic and catchy as far as that kind of happens. It's a very catchy song. So it's just a nice one. This is another song that hit pretty heavily on the charts. This one did pretty well for the time when it was out back in those days. Just a very nice one. Great follow up to Applause. A little bit more mellow, not quite as jivey as Applause or Guy, the third single, but I would have to say both of those are pretty electronic. But this is just Lady Gaga back in her vintage days as far as that kind of happens. Just stock kind of Lady Gaga song that if you can find the version, if you can find this song still and kind of get it, I would definitely do it. Just despite the fact that it was removed, it is a pretty excellent song, so I definitely recommend it still. That's kind of the thing. The third single is Guy, and I definitely like this one. This is very much like a hype kind of steadfast hit. I would have to say it's a later single. Definitely like the concept of this being there needed to be more singles off of Art Pop. It was surprising that this single this didn't do better. Definitely, it's kind of a it's very surprising that this single didn't do better. It's kind of a crap situation that that kind of happened that way. I'd have to say, but it is a pretty infectious dance tune. This one's probably the most litty and rave and turned up song of all three of the singles. This one's a little bit more hype than Applause was or Do What You Want. Do What You Want's the most mellow, but Guy's pretty much like the hypest one. Pretty much one of the hyper songs on the whole album, I'd have to say. Definitely has some crazy energy. This is great. Lady Gaga does a great job with this particular song. She gets pretty energized on this particular song, and this works pretty damn well. So it's a good concept to kind of get this one. Definitely like the overall vibes of it. It's just this whole album. This whole album has a pretty sheer streak of electricity about it. I just would have to say it's got some great energy and overall type vibes that just carry forth. So this is a good concept of an album. Definitely needed to happen. This is some electric kind of vibes for 2013 as far as it kind of happens, and definitely this continues to be a surprise that this album just didn't do better because songs like this definitely were pretty quality. I'd have to say. So that's kind of the concept about it, but. So basically, there's 15 songs on this particular album. So there's 15 songs on this particular album, and out of those 15, I wound up recommending to you 11. So that's really only 4 songs out of those that I didn't recommend. I'll go ahead and recommend the 11 songs. They would be Applause, Do What You Want, Guy, Art Pop, the title track, Donatella, Swine, Venus, Fashion, Mary Jane Holland, Sex Dreams, and Manicure. So all of these are pretty damn excellent, I'd have to say. Some particular ones. Really liked Art Pop, the title track. This is a pretty nice one. This is kind of an in-between kind of ruminating R&B like tune. I'd have to say it's around the house and a homely feel that it has definitely, but it's still a melodic vibe. I'd definitely have to say this is kind of one that has the energy turned down a little bit. Definitely some house cleaning music as far as that kind of happens. Just kind of one just being more homely and that type of stuff. Just kind of not much to do. Just kind of a ruminating type tune to kind of kick back as far as that kind of happens. Just steadfast as far as that kind of goes, but just an overall nice one. Definitely like that one. Another vibe that kind of Another song that has a great vibe about it, similar to Guy, the third single, is Donatella. This is definitely a pretty stellar album cut, I'd have to say, that keeps like the boppish energy. Definitely, this is a good cousin of Applause, I'd have to say, and it's just a ritzy, graceful. And this song just has some ritzy, graceful feels, I'd have to say. So this is a pretty sheer one. This is definitely one of the more hype songs on the particular album. Just has a lot of crazed kind of. Donatella definitely has some crazed energy on here. It's definitely a pretty hype one to kind of get. I definitely like the fact that Lady Gaga was just turned up and having some energized, kind of infectious kind of vibes because it definitely works pretty well. Another one like that is Swine. This is definitely a craze kind of Jeffree Star-like vibes that this song particularly kind of has. It's damn near rave type energy that it has on it. And I just would have to say this is a very fashionable and rich sheen that it. I would say that this song has a very fashionable and rich sheen. So it's pretty good to kind of get some of these. These are definitely like some of these ritzy type ones that I was talking about. These are definitely some songs with some ritzy type vibes on here. Just very graceful and almost bougie in that sort of sense. Not necessarily full blown bougie like Spoiled, but just kind of the concept of just being more blue blood esque and just kind of a little bit more rich fashion as far as that kind of goes. Definitely some graceful kind of ones. Another one like that Yet another one like that is Venus. This is definitely kind of a hype ritzy fashion walk. Venus is definitely a hype ritzy fashion walk like tune. I'd have to say it's got some good dance energy and it's a very catchy chorus that this song particularly has. And this is just a stock album cut. Definitely have to speak highly of this particular song. These are just some great vibes. Really like the chorus on this particular song. It's very catchy, affable. Some of these ones, this Lady Gaga just went stock right through this album, kind of similar to what she did with The Fame and Born This Way. As far as it kind of happens, these are just stock hit songs, great for dance nights out and things like that. Just fashion walks, catwalks, some of those type things as far as those sorts of things kind of go. A pretty nice mid-tempo tune on here is Fashion. This is a nice kind of thumping bounce for like some solid mid-tempo drive. I'd have to say this is a decent makeshift and kind of late day blear that I feel from this particular song, but it's pretty bubbly, I'd have to say. So this is kind of one where it does have some of that dance kind of energy and peppy snap about it, but it's just kind of for like a bleary kind of car tune as far as that kind of happens just on the way home. Maybe you're getting ready to go out, something like that. Just kind of a bleary makeshift where much of this album doesn't really step into makeshift that much, but I would have to say there's like a few small tastes of just like some makeshift kind of taste, just getting back home and then getting ready to go out as far as that kind of happens. I feel like Fashion is definitely one of those type ones just for some bleary kind of car rides home, just appreciating, just being like, oh, work was all right, but now I'm going to go have some fun as far as that kind of happens. It's very bubbly in its approach to how it does it. Definitely like the concept of that. Fashion kind of does that. I'd say that like I would say at least Fashion does that. Sex Dreams is a pretty nice one. This is kind of a power pop kickback hangout tune. I would have to say it's a very, this song has a very rosy and velvet-like gloss that says sleeper single about it. So this is definitely one that probably could have been like the sleeper fourth single if this album had been. Sex Dreams is definitely like the sleeper fourth single that probably could have happened if there had been more promotion for it as far as that kind of happens. So it's just kind of the concept about it. Definitely has like some pretty power pop type energy about it. It's just a nice highlighted one as far as that kind of happens. Pretty much some affable kind of energy that probably could have been marketed rather well, I'd have to say. I just like the concept of it. It's just, it really has some commercial type feels about it. It's another one that's almost makeshift, kind of similar to Fashion, just kind of has that power pop type feel, as would have to say. And then another kind of ritzy, fashionable type tune on here is Mary Jane Holland. I'd have to say this is a fashionable kind of outing fare. I'd have to say it's a glossy and posh night. I definitely would have to suppose, and it's just a good social snap that it has for something besides clubbing. So this is just an overall nice one. Very fashionable. This really feels like a fashion walk to something. A little bit around clothing, stuff like that, just looking nice, getting primped up as far as that kind of happens. Just a real nice one for some outing fare, just in a social time. This is definitely kind of, I mean, there's some songs on this album that kind of feel like they could be in a nightclub in a sense, but they also just feel like they've got something more in mind than just being at a dance club or a bar or something like that as far as it can happen. So Mary Jane Holland's definitely one of those. It's very ritzy type overall plush kind of feel that just works pretty well. This would have to say. And then Manicure is a pretty good highlight. This is definitely like a rowdy kind of getting ready to step out type tune. I'd have to say it's a get pumped kind of litty time song that I definitely feel like it has. This song has some get pumped kind of litty times about it, I'd have to say. And it's just a task done, kind of cut loose and be out and about kind of cut. I definitely would have to suppose. So this is just a nice one. This is definitely one that I would see out of Avril Lavigne or Kelly Clarkson, someone like that. Just kind of one of those more karaoke type tunes, getting ready to have a good craze kind of dance time, just really getting excited, getting ready to loosen up a bit, just have some times as far as that kickback kind of goes. It's a real nice one to kind of have. A little bit more rowdy Lady Gaga. Definitely like the concept of that. It's a nice one to kind of see her get loose and that sort of stuff as far as that kind of happens. It's a good concept. So, but to talk about the four songs I didn't recommend on here, basically those songs would just be Dope and Gypsy, which basically some homely songs on here were Dope and Gypsy, which just kind of had like a more plainer feel that just didn't really carry the catchiness as far as what I was looking for. Those are just kind of more basic ones. Maybe they were a little bit makeshift, but they just didn't nail it quite as well as I was looking for. Jewels and Drugs with Too Short, Twista, and T.I. just didn't really have Jewels and Drugs with Too Short, T.I. and Twista. This was not a very good vibe as far as that kind of happened. I mean, I like the concept that Lady Gaga had these folks on that particular song, but this I like the concept of those folks being on the song, but just the execution as to how that song kind of was pulled off just didn't really nail it quite as well as it needed to, I'd have to say. And then Oro was just kind of a poor one. Didn't really like the arrangements of that particular one. So that one was just pretty much one of the few duds on the whole album, I'd have to say. So me recommending basically 11 songs out of 15 on here. I'm going to go ahead and give this album like a 9.25 out of 10. I definitely feel like this is one of Lady Gaga's best. Definitely some real affable vibes, some hit singles, despite the fact that some of them kind of were mismanaged as far as that kind of happens and didn't chart as heavily as they needed to. But I definitely would have to say it's a pretty hit album. Lady Gaga just on some energetic and kind of craze type vibes. It's very similar to Jeffree Star and just some overall fashionable stepping out that just works pretty well. This would have to say is pretty much one of Lady Gaga's best albums. If I didn't say that, I'd have to say. So that's a good concept there. The social score, I'm going to give a 10 out of 10 because this whole album just has a pretty crazed overall vibe for outings and just stuff like that. It's just a great time. Just has some overall fun and just overall executed vibes that just hit pretty heavily. Just a great shot in the arm as far as some vivid and vivacious and vicarious times that just work extremely well and just happen to be very social and affable as far as that kind of happens. So I just would have to say, so it gets a 10 score in terms of social. And I would say in terms of the future, like Lady Gaga's been gone since 2020 or 2021, if you count the Dawn of Chromatica remix album, I'd have to say, but she'll probably be back at some point. Hopefully we'll get more albums like this because this is definitely some excellent quality here. I do have to sheerly recommend this, but yeah, there's more Lady Gaga reviews. I'm probably going to review Cheek to Cheek soon and stuff like that, but this is definitely something I highly recommend.